And today's special guest, she's always a special guest, is Deborah Byrd, social media expert. There she is. She's always going to bring the fun and the inappropriateness. Like I wouldn't expect anything less.
I just like to get people to think with like the shock and awe factor. Like let's interrupt
Absolutely.
today and just,
We're going to have a very in-depth conversation about the role of social media. Social has changed so much over the years as well, too, in terms of the algorithms and reels and stories and the way it's pushing out content because it followed TikTok. This is not the same Instagram as before, and Deb can get into that. Just really an open conversation. What's up, Deb?
Hi.
I mean, social media has been around since 2008, right? Like that's pretty much it when Facebook started it, and then it just went off. But Deb, not any particular topic, but I just want to talk about the role it plays today in our businesses, how the algorithm has changed, and also why is there still so much resistance to it? I mean, I think honestly, the resistance to it is two things. It's either it's fear or is people don't know what they're doing. I mean, there's a wrong way to do social media, and if you do it wrong, you're not going to want to do it anymore, right?
It's the time it takes. Like I was talking to someone this morning who is very well known in our industry, mega producer. And he was like, you don't even want to know how long it took me to do this green screen video that I did. Cause I was like, hey, good job. I saw you posted a reel yesterday using the green screen effect. Like he was like, you don't even want to know. Like it was, and I was like, and this person loves to play basketball. So I told him it's the same way from when you first started, practicing your free throws. It sucks at first, but it gets better and better and you build the routine and then it builds momentum. So I think there's resistance because it's time, it's overwhelmment of like, what do I say? What platform do I focus on? You talk about what's changed in social. It's like all of their algorithms and features, they're constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
So staying on top of it all, it's like, I mean, it's really why we exist because it's nearly impossible to be a professional doing mortgages and then also trying to create your own content in a professional way, meaningful way, done the right way. Both are full-time jobs,
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I have a thought about that learning curve though. Well, number one, I think one of the things you're saying is don't be lazy, right? It's Alex Ramosi. Don't be lazy. It's new. Put time into it and learn. Like you can't do it overnight. But I'm going to take the opposite side of that. Here's the thing about things that are hard and effective. Understand social media is effective. If you don't believe social media is effective, you're looking at the wrong world. But I wanted to prove a point. It's okay that it's hard. It's good that it's hard because here's the thing. The harder it is, and if you get ahead of it, your competition can't catch up to you. I want you guys to understand something. If it is so easy for me to cold call a realtor, say a script that I was taught, and steal them from another lender, they're going to get stolen from you too the same way. It's like that unfaithful girl. If I can approach a girl and I can make her quit her marriage really quickly, I don't want to marry that girl because she's going to get taken the same way because the intention is so low, right? The requirements are so low. But if I were to build a very big brand and a following that converts really high, I mean, look at what your sister have done, Denise. Try replicating that in 1 or 2 years. And so I know people look at that and they say, that's intimidating. But you know what? Good, it should be, because it should scare her competitors. And if you're willing to put the work in, you're going to get there and you're going to be untouchable. That's the thing. That's how I see it.
I think what people don't realize, just using my sister as an example, because there's been a lot of people who tried to copy and like mortgage dorks, or they'll put mortgage nerds and they do the E as the number 3. You have to back up what you say. Like it's just the online version of your reputation, what social media is. So what you do offline, like you've got to back it up. And we were talking about this at the very beginning of, the call is like, otherwise truth is going to be exposed. And so it's all the impressions online and offline where what is your reputation in the market center? How would your clients describe you? What are the top adjectives they would use to describe you? How do your partners, have you taught them how to refer you? Why do they use you? What is your point of view and stance? Like, again, what's different about you? And I have empathy for those who like really struggle with trying to figure out what is it that I do differently than all these other mortgage professionals in our space? Because guys, I had to do it, but I had to do it against my identical twin when we worked at the same company with the same products in the same area. And, oh, we look alike, sound alike, have a lot of the same point of views, which is why I went so deep and spent thousands of dollars learning why me. And some of it, I had to change my belief. That was the first thing that I had to start with, because I was self-sabotaging, thinking that anywhere I went, people would be like, oh, are you the mortgage nerd? And they did for some time, and they still do sometimes. And I'd be like, no, I'm the Byrd. Like, I'm the other one. But Kai knows, because he's hung out with us, like, we are very different. We're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're very different. And there's people that just I would be friends with because we vibe. And then there's people only she would be friends with because I'm a little, rough around the edges in some ways. And so I think that's a lot of it, is just believing in yourself and knowing that you have value to bring. And if you don't think you have value, then that's a whole nother conversation.
So we've had a lot of platforms over the years as well, too, right? We've had Facebook, Instagram, we have TikTok.
There was Clubhouse for a while.
TikTok before was called something else.
Musically,
right? And then we have LinkedIn. Okay. So I get asked this question all the time, and I'm sure you get asked this question all the time, but what is your perspectives on the differences between the different platforms, and should we distribute our time between them, or should we focus on one? What is your take?
So I'll say it depends. That's typically my response to most questions, because it depends on what you're going live, what you're posting, who's the target audience, like what's it for, and what are your goals and expectations with the outcome. But from an overall standpoint, where the majority of your connections, where are they right now? And who is your target audience? Whoever the who is, then I would first start with getting really good on that platform. And typically it's going to be Facebook is still number one, in the sense that it has the most amount of users because it is the oldest. Doesn't mean that it has as much active time per day, because TikTok and Instagram actually surpass Facebook. But I would say Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn. And I would be everywhere every day, because the opportunity cost of not being everywhere every day, which there's tools to automate that, guys, but nobody is posting enough for the opportunity that social has. It is free distribution other than your time. And nowhere in the history of time has marketing distribution ever been free. You had to pay for it, whether it was newspapers, magazines, billboards, you name it. So the algorithm does not work against you. It actually works for you. And they're all going to interest-based graphs. So the challenge is you have to self-reflect on how do you consume, because there's multiple versions of who we are. When you're on TikTok, it's a little bit more of that edutainment. You want to be entertained. When you're on LinkedIn, which used to be more for job searching, type platform, you're a little bit more professional and polished than, which would be similar to how you hang out with your coworkers versus perhaps your boys that you went to college with.
You're right. What is my goal? Because for me, if it's mortgage people, Facebook for me is going to get the highest return, because I have a 5,000 person limit. That's plenty of loan officers. There's a deeper interaction in Facebook, because I think people actually go on Facebook and they spend a little bit more time engaging versus Instagram, where you just kind of scroll and you look for entertainment. However, lately, I've been also building a customer base of non-mortgage people. And so I'm sitting there going, well, I don't know how I can just randomly meet people that I don't have anything in common. It's easy with a mortgage person. I can add a mortgage person. They're like, oh, you're in mortgage? I'm in mortgage. I'll add you as a friend. But I can't randomly just let me just friend doctors and attorneys and other people that I coach. I've turned to Instagram, because Instagram has a more public facing, I can create reels, which pushes out into the algorithm and attract. And also at the same time, once I start getting really nichey, I'm going to turn to LinkedIn, because then I can go after the professions. I can go after the doctors. I can go after the attorneys and everything else. But they serve different purposes. I don't look at them the same at all. I use Instagram more as in attracting a new market. And Facebook, it's I'm nurturing the market. Facebook is kind of like my database. I'm nurturing the market that I already have. Instagram, I'm trying to create business, and same with LinkedIn. I'm just trying to go out there and create business.
What about YouTube?
I was told I should throw
Yes, I'm
stuff
gonna
up
put
on
the
a YouTube
squeeze
channel.
on you for YouTube. You know, it's
Yeah.
owned by Google. And when you go to Google to even search things, you see YouTube videos that pop up at the top.
You're right, because if somebody were to search a topic that I was an expert in, those YouTube videos will pop up first before anything
Yes.
else.
So for anyone on this call, I would, if you don't have a YouTube channel, and think of it kind of like Netflix, where, you know, depending on your mood, they make it very easy for you to find like documentaries or maybe a rom-com. Like that's how you can set up your different playlist within YouTube. But to me, YouTube would be number two. I don't really think of it as a social medium, although I know that it is. But what I like about it is the motive. Like when people go to YouTube, they're there to stay a while because they're learning about something. It's not just your mindless scroll because I'm bored, which by the way, the average person spends about 53 minutes at a time. But the competitive advantage with LinkedIn is that you are more memorable if you're seen on LinkedIn because they don't spend as much time scrolling as they do like on TikTok. It's hard to like, I could like or even favorite something and it's like, what was that person's name? I know I really liked it. Or
Yeah.
I'll screenshot it thinking I'll go back to it. And I
Yeah.
have like 36,000 screenshots that I have not gone back to.
So in terms of attention, right, from shortest to longest, it's probably TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Where does
Yes.
LinkedIn fall between Facebook? But YouTube is definitely the longest because if I'm going to YouTube, I'm preparing myself to watch for at least 2-3 minutes. Like nobody goes to YouTube to watch for 30 seconds. That's like Instagram,
Right.
right? But you can put really educational things on YouTube. And you know, for some of you, I've seen you, I've seen some of you do, let's say, educational pieces on IG where you want to talk for 2-3 minutes. Those would be great for YouTube. I don't know that people have the attention span to watch that on Instagram for that long. Maybe Facebook, okay, but not necessarily Instagram. And here's the thing about algorithms now, because the algorithms all changed. And TikTok changed the entire algorithm. If you guys didn't know,
Yes.
there was a time that your success on Instagram had to do with the number of followers you had. And that's it. Instagram was no different than Facebook. My followers saw my stuff, so I had to gather a bunch of followers. But TikTok came along and said, no, you don't need followers. We're just going to feed you content. You can follow the people that you like. And then if you start following people, you start watching more content, we'll feed you more of that content. So it was less about who you follow and just like on TikTok, you can literally follow nobody and just start liking certain things and it'll just feed that to you. So then Instagram changed that algorithm as well too. And a lot of that algorithm is based on not only the views, but who makes it through the entire video. So if you have a 1 minute long video and people actually make it through the 1 minute long video, both Instagram and TikTok are going to say, this is a great video. I'm going to continue to push that viral. So why does that matter? It matters because if you put out a 1 minute or 2 minute long video and it's kind of boring for the attention span of an Instagram or TikTok video and people watch it for 10 seconds and they stop, the algorithm is not going to like that. And so a lot of times in Instagram and TikTok, they're going to like you to do shorter videos, 15-second videos, 30-second videos, 45-second videos, because if you can make it all the way through, it benefits you, and TikTok and IG are going to push it. And so to your point, Deb, if you have those longer videos, YouTube is a great place because that's where people spend lots of, and actually a 30-second YouTube video is really short. When I go on YouTube, I'm expecting to spend honestly 5 minutes minimum, 15 minutes. You know, I'm looking at studio lights and I'm going to YouTube for it.
So for last year, YouTube was ranked number 2. So TikTok was 1 and YouTube was number 2 on time spent on the platform per day, which makes sense because again, when you go to YouTube, you're usually there to stay a while. What I don't love about YouTube that the other platforms do better at is the ability to build community with the commenting and like the DMs and highlights. And so it's great for educational, which is why the other platform should be where you make a quick, you know, maybe 30-second reel where you dangle the carrot and then add it to your story, have it linked in your story or maybe on your link tree. That's like to see the full video where I go through this, you know, start to finish in 7 minutes, click here. Like but you're always trying to cross-pollinate on each platform too. But the context of every platform matters when you're creating content. Because the way that the platform is set and designed of how to attract and which, like what they consider as a view, you need to know those things when you're creating the content. Because what you put on TikTok, probably not going to work on LinkedIn.
Right.
You know?
There's another conversation that I've had with in terms of conversion, right? In terms of content itself. And I want to get into the micro conversation of content, like what type of content, but I just want to look at overall for a second. It's this fascination with how many followers do I have, how many views I have, like what are the really important metrics? And one of the things that I'll say, and I had a discussion about with my coach, is that what is the purpose of your social media? Because if your purpose is to be an influencer, that's completely different than using social media to create a business and for sales. Okay. And here's why, because influencers monetize by the views themselves because they get directly compensated by either ads, sponsors, or the platform themselves that pay them. And so all they have to do is get lots of followers and get lots of views. But that doesn't mean these influencers are getting people to like buy any products. Like they are the product and they're putting up ads versus a business that wants to go up and actually create traffic, create lead traffic and sales traffic. And one of the things that I see, Deb, is I see a lot of people using influencer strategies to try to build their businesses and create traffic. Right. So they're getting a lot of views and they're getting, but it's not turning into leads. And so they're saying, well, how come I'm not getting a business? How come I'm getting leads? And I look at their stuff and I'm like, this is really great and entertaining, but there's no call to actions. There's no direction of where we're going. Right.
Well, and not all evidence of it working or not working is visible. Like some of it is invisible. And so that's the first question I always ask is like, what is your purpose? And in a perfect world, what do you want your social media to do for you? Because probably the second most asked question is, what type of account should I have? Like, should I have a business account or should I have a, personal account or should it just be one? And I'm like, well, it depends. It depends on what is your purpose for it? Are you wanting to go consumer direct and you're trying to like actually interrupt the scroll to where it's really important that you're feeding the algorithm of exactly from every single graphic to every hook to every caption to it's got to be very clear sending messages of who your target audience is. If that's your goal, is to get that new visibility and discoverability from non-followers who may be interested in what you do, that takes a different strategy than the LO who's like, it's just for social proof for me that when people land on my feed, it's usually going to come from a referral. Right. But when they go to look me up, I want to be able to control the narrative. And so it absolutely depends on the who, which is why we start with the who of who are you and who are you creating content for? What do they care about? What's going on in their world that matters to them? Because sometimes what we think matters doesn't. And those who are chasing the vanity metrics and like, that's some of the trends and the funny trends. I know you had tagged it in your group. It's like, yeah, that may get you more visibility, but it's not like not all visibility is equal because I could post a half naked pic and get a lot of views and likes and, but are those the right kinds of likes and views from dudes in other countries? Like, no, that's not so it's like, I'd rather you get 2 views from potential clients who were, on the fence of contacting you, but once they saw your feed, they're like, all right, I can trust this guy. So now I'm going to hit contact. Although on your lead form, it's going to say my agent referred me. But what actually influenced them was that moment that they judged you based off what they could see. I'd rather you get fewer views and have fewer people following you and go deeper with those that are following you. Because that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see is once we get followers, we don't pay any attention to them. We don't interact with them. We don't even say thank you, for the follow. And we're so focused on new people every single month that it's like, if you just took care of, if you had 100 followers that would give you 2 closings a year just by you going deeper with those, like that's not unrealistic to think you could get 2 closings a year from 100 followers that were in your tribe.
Yeah. I was listening to Hermosi podcast and he was saying that he knows somebody who makes $1 million a year off of 5,000 Instagram followers because she's so deep. And she said that she made her first 100,000 off of 200 followers because it was so specific, targeted content that she did. So I'm just going to write this in chat. branding, marketing, and sales, right? Like three separate areas. And I think you need to look at that and ask yourself, where does social, what roles does it play in those three things? And so you're right. I was talking to somebody this morning about just branding because we were talking about out-of-state branding. And I pulled up Jody and I said, look, here's an example of branding of her putting all the different states that she lends in. And that's an example of branding so that she doesn't pigeonhole herself into one state. She's not Washington. Because I said, if you're going to go into another state, right? So John is in Iowa. He says, you know what? I want to start penetrating Georgia and Florida. One of the first things he's going to want to do is he's going to alter his branding, his websites, his link trees, his Instagram, his Facebook accounts to include those states. Is he necessarily using it to create business? No. But if I were to look up John and I were to Google him, if I start seeing that, okay, I'm going to trust him. I live in Florida, but I'm going to trust him. I don't realize he's necessary in Iowa. Okay. Then there's the marketing aspect. The marketing aspect is basically marketing is to keep it simple. The way that Hermosi would say it is that, are you letting people who don't know about you know more about you? Or the people that do know about you know more about you? And so that's when the content and the education is going to come in, which doesn't necessarily create sales. But what you're doing is you're raising your value. You're raising your value with like, this person's an expert. I might want to consider that person. And that would be where your content comes in. And then there's the sales aspect. And so the sales aspect is using social media for sales. And so if you use social media for sales, your marketing has to be geared a little bit more towards sales. There has to be call to action. There has to be involvement. Like if you put up something, and I see you do this all the time, Deb, you say, share with me your thoughts, right? And I even heard somebody say, don't be afraid to put out content that people will disagree with or the haters, because all that does is that'll just create more comments, and it'll start the conversation. And it's those conversations and it's those conversations that will turn to sales. Not to mention, you could post like very little content, but if you are following other people, making friends, commenting on their stories and DMing, social media becomes a sales outlet for you. And that's the thing. That's why a lot of people, they'll do social media for branding and marketing. They don't do any sales. Like you're not doing that. That's what I mean. You're not doing it. You're not doing any sales activities. You're not doing call to actions, and you are not reaching out to people. You're more worried about people watching you than you watching them. Right.
Yes. I think
And
a
so
lot of
you have to
people
figure out your role.
they get branding and marketing confused. And marketing is a very broad term, but I usually explain it as marketing helps create opportunities because it's awareness. It creates the opportunity, but sales converts it. So a lot of times, even with what we do, I'm like, we can get you all the way to the 1 yard line. And this is mainly when people are asking for like, what's the ROI and how many deals am I going to get a month or a year? And I'm like, the reason why any professional would never be able to answer that is because I don't know your ability to convert from scripting to follow up and nurturing and, your advice. How clear do you make it for people to be able to make decisions? But sales helps people make decisions. Marketing creates the opportunity. Branding is more of it's a long-term, like I think of like the infinity symbol. It's your reputation at scale from like a brand purpose standpoint, that sometimes the marketing we do comes at the expense of the brand because too much marketing. And there's someone that we probably all know that lately has been doing a lot of this where I'm tuning her off, like unsubscribe. I can't handle, like, it's so salesy over and over and over. Where now it devalued the brand for me because I got annoyed.
Yeah.
So be careful of the fine line.
Yeah. The brand is definitely the who, right?
But to your point, you should be prospecting on social daily. And I treat social as an extension to my CRM where people happen to spend most of their time. It's just most don't have a strategy, nor have they built in a blueprint of how to effectively and consistently use it as no different than like a CRM tool.
Right. I'm going to coin a new term because I actually don't like the term back to basics. I'm going to use the term, let's evolve to modern basics. Let's evolve to modern basics. And so what is modern basics? Well, when we think about the basics, we think about outreach. And we do think about technology, but I think the technology that Alex refers to is automation technology. There's not a real person behind the automation. But what modern basics is I'm going to reach out to somebody, but I might reach out to them via DM because I know they'll respond. The likelihood of people today, especially the younger generation, picking up the phone, right? I can start a conversation on text message. I can start a conversation on DM. I can follow somebody in the stories, and I'm still nurturing them. And that can lead to a phone call. So if I can nurture people using modern ways, then we're going to basics, but we're evolving to modern basics. We're not going back to basics. We're evolving to modern basics. And I think that's the thing about basics is like what basics is are you nurturing your clients? Are you following up with clients? Are you taking care of your clients? But we don't have to do it the old way. Heck, if we're going to do the old way, somebody write a letter and put it in the mail. Like we can do that too, right? But we have all these modern tools. I mean, part of how we nurture relationships, and there are people here that I have friendships with outside of just mortgages, like Rob, Ashley, people like that, is we just send memes back and forth to each other. If you get into a close relationship with a client to the point where you're sending memes, whether it's about the Cowboys losing or the Rams winning, sorry, I had to put that in. If you're getting a laugh, right, then you're connecting with them. I know she's like, wow. Then you're connecting with them, and you're using modern basics to do that. Now, I want to touch upon a topic because I know Rob has touched upon this topic. You slightly did, is what is the proper mix and what is the proper ratio between personal content, or let's say non-business type of content, and content. And I think that you said something. It's like, well, I can put a half naked picture out there, but I might be drawing the wrong person. While I know Rob uses this as an example. If your typical client, the demographic of your client, let's say, is either housewife, husband, or it's just somebody that cooks, he might want to throw a cooking video out there because it still attracts the demographic that he's going to use as a buyer, right? And Gary Vaynerchuk says that too, right? So if you can, if you know the demographic of your buyer, so we always look at our buyers as like, oh, I'm like, it's the demographic question, especially when you ask who's your buyer? Oh, it's first-time home buyers and move-up buyers and VA people. No, that's your loans. Who's your buyer? Is it an empty nester? Is it a housewife between 30 and 45? Is it a first-time home buyer who has a tech job between 27 and 35 with a baby of 3 years old? Right? Is it a conservative? Is it liberal? Like whoever that is. I mean,
is it a single male? Is it a single female? Are they
is it a
married?
single female?
Kids, no kids. Like the average age of the first-time home buyer is around 35, 36. And it's like, that's why with the who, I ask, well, what is it that they care about? What's going on in their life? Like, what's the emotional trigger and the physical need, as well as the emotional need and the physical want and the emotional want of driving the human behavior to be like, you know what, at 35, I want to buy my first house. And why didn't they do it sooner? So how do you get ahead? Like, are they video gamers? Yeah. Are they like sports people? Are they into yoga and healthy living and like functional medicine? So you can't effectively create valuable content because value is subjective and you can't give value. You can only get value. Then if you don't know who you're making the content for, then you're just like hoping and praying that your content's going to stick to like a too broad of an audience where it doesn't speak to them. And when people go to social, what they want to see is, have you helped people like me? And have you helped people like me recently? Like, I don't want to see it from 2019.
Yeah. I had a conversation with, I think it was Keith, and we talked about niching. And I want everybody to put in, what is the demographic of your top 2 bars? Age, occupation, hobbies. Like Stacy said, they have dogs, right? If instead of just looking at them as borrowers and like their DTI and their assets, like if you figured out them, their hobbies, their ages, their likes, their dislikes, all that stuff, and you start creating content on that, you will attract that content. You will relate to that content, right? I think that's one of the reasons why the VA niche is such a strong niche, because it's both the product and the demographic. You talk about, because you talk about veterans and their service, and I salute you on Veterans Day and all those things. Well, at the same time, you're talking about the product. You get both in one. And so you need to look at the other demographics the same way. If I can look at VA that way, that there's a person, there's a veteran behind that product. Can I look at a first-time home buyer the same way? Is there an age demographic? Is there something demographic? You know, I just moved to Austin, and it's interesting, where I play golf, it's like young tech professionals that move from Northern California, and it's very distinct, that demographic,
Yeah.
right? And so do you know those demographics? And I think that that's where it's appropriate, that if you are doing personal stuff, I mean, you see Rob doing, he puts up cooking videos, man, all those people that love cooking, he's attracting the right type of attention, because those are typically homeowners with kitchens.
What's crazy is when you look at the data, most mortgage professionals, not all, but a lot of them, for the last 2 years, most of their clients were Gen Xers. They were the ones that they didn't care about the rates. They were a little bit more established in their career. They were the highest income earners. They were typically married. They had kids under the age of 18 living in their house. And the biggest pain point was that they had outgrown that starter home. And it was like the feeling cramped was the issue. But that's a completely different educational, campaign. And most LOs are still creating content that's like, here's the process for a mortgage. And did you know you don't have to put, 20% down to buy a home? And it's like, they are wondering, how the heck do I sell a home, buy a home at the same time? What are my options? Could I keep it? And we don't focus on that type of content. Again, this is where, doesn't mean you don't create other content for other types of ideal clients that you serve, but if you don't ever take the time to reflect of the who, just from the last 12 months of who's buying, for some, it's people who are downsizing, which is also a completely different messaging.
And even first-time homebuyers, I've heard this a lot, right? Like, we will typically say, we think, oh, well, the first-time homebuyers are like young millennials or Gen Z. No, there's boomers and Gen X buying their homes for the very, very first time. So why is that important? A lot of people will say, and they said this at Ford a lot. Remember, Sharon said it, Gary V said it, Hermosi said it, that tell stories of what you've already done versus what you could do. So saying, I help first-time home buyers, that's what you could do, versus saying, I just helped somebody buy a home, but be specific. I just helped a Gen Xer buy for the first time. And you wouldn't literally say Gen Xer. You could say something like, I helped a 50-year-old couple who never thought they could buy a home, buy for the first time. The phrase that you want people to say to themselves, because I've had people call me and say this to me multiple times, is they said, Kai, I heard you speak and it spoke to me. Okay. So when you say first-time home buyer, that doesn't speak to somebody. But when you say, I just helped a couple in their 50s buy a home for the first time when they never thought they would buy, and they rented all their lives, and here's how, you're going to have those people contact you and say, that spoke to me. Or I'm a young millennial or young Gen Z, and it feels like it would be impossible to buy a home, but we made it happen, or Deb made it happen. That's going to speak to somebody. And so talking into that demographic as well.
What I would rather, what I have my clients do is making it part of the process where you interview your client just after closing, and you have them tell their story. A little bit of background, like where it's always the past, present, future. And that then creates future marketing for you, where it's not always you selling you, but and then you can invite them as a collaborator, which is really the holy grail right now on social, because that trust can be transferred whenever you invite as a collaborator. It shows on both's main home feed. Well, now people who are friends with that client you just served, that are probably a lot like them, are like, oh, that's how you can get more followers that are, by design, just through that adoption of trust. But it's leveraging every single opportunity that you have. And most of the time we don't interview our clients, and some may have people that are like miniature TikTok influencers, that their day job may be a teacher, but they're like, if you were to ask them to do a quick video, it would be optimized with trending audio, with attention grabbing transitions. It's like, but we just don't ask, because we feel like we have to be the marketing department, when truth be told, in a perfect world, I would want your clients to be your marketing department, because they're your raving fans And they're the ones, that's how you go deep but wide. So
Yeah.
I want people focused on deep.
I did the exact same thing with Jared. Jared's had a lot of success. This is like your third year in the industry, and Jared's seen has seen tremendous growth from his second to third year. He doubled his production, and I want to say for a third-year loan officer in a tough market like this, Jared's funding 8 loans a month. And I called him and I asked him, and I said, "Hey, Jared, can you do me a favor?" I texted him. I said, "Can you name the 5 things that I did that made a difference? Can you tell me that?" Right? And he did. He wrote me. He not only wrote it, but he posted it in the board. And so then what I did was I said, okay, great. I'm going to create an Instagram carousel off of it. 5 shifts my client made that doubled his business. But I got these answers from him.
Right.
Okay. He implemented one-to-many. He optimized his social media, high performance work structure, think like a business owner, invest in your business. But this was not me marketing things that I do. This was me just asking one of my clients, what did I do to help you? And to take a real case study to do that. Let's see. There was a question from Chris. Are clients receptive to doing a video testimony? Okay. I want to give you guys a little bit of hack because I think some of you can struggle with this. Like, what do I do? Do I ask my client to do this? They're not going to do it. Super simple. Number one is you should be doing Zooms with your clients, like not phone calls. You should be doing Zooms with your clients because they're so, hey, let's get on a Zoom. Let's talk about it. At some point in time, when you get on a Zoom with your client and you are doing your closing conversation, you should be recording all your Zooms because remember, that's content, right? And so if you're my client, Deb, and we're talking about our file right now, I can say, hey, so what was the best part about working with me? And just let them talk. They don't know that, they're whatever. And then it's being recorded. Say, by the way, I just recorded that. Do I have permission to use that clip? Because I would love to use that for marketing, what you just said. And they don't have to sit in front of a camera and film the testimonial. It was just a conversation that I had. Now, I happened to text Jared, but Jared, if I was just on a random Zoom with you and I said, hey, Jared, what are 5 reasons that I helped you? You would have just said it. Great. It's recorded. It's recorded. And that's how we get testimonials from people. But you're right. I think what happens is we're sitting there and we're trying to figure out, oh, what's my content, this and that. It's like, you guys have been in the business for years. There's people out there that you've helped. Look at the last 20 transactions, look at the demographics, and then call them. What did you like about me? What was it? And then just repeat that. And then it's in their words.
What I have found works really well is most people, all humans, have this burning desire to contribute. Like they want to know they're contributing to something greater than just, air. And so if you can frame it in the sense of, by having this interview, the intention is to help people just like them be able to make this decision with more clarity or more confidence, because there's people out there who could be waiting and they're stuck in indecision. And just like you had these fears, concerns, there were lots of different options that you had. Like, what is your story for this home purchase? What did you have to overcome? And when you make it where they're contributing and they're sharing something that's going to help their prior self, which is the easiest person to always influence or speak to, then the motive, they don't put pressure on themselves either, because some clients may get nervous about, oh my gosh, you're going to put, am I going to be on? They think it's like TV. But when you can angle it from contribution and it's the social stories, and the goal of that is for it to plant the seed that's like, oh, that reminds me of my sister's situation. I'm going to now send this in the DMs or copy the link and send it via text to my sister because this is her scenario. So it's just getting your clients to tell your story, mission, purpose, but through their personal, story from buying the home. And then imagine if you did that for annual mortgage reviews and every single client that you pre-qualify. I have clients, I'm like, for Saturday post, it's, I have a buyer who, and it's ... is looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Allen, looking to feed into this school district, because I'm trying to help my buyer. And then if they're selling a home, you better believe on Sundays, I'm helping market that home because I know that they have to sell the home in order to buy. So I help create inventory and a market by leveraging every single lead and application that I get as ways to consistently show up online that's going to be beneficial for those who are working with me, but also for those that I'm going to be nurturing in the long run, because it's all about how do we get clients, how do we keep clients, then how do we get clients referring us over and over and over.
Yeah, Chesky, you like to ask that question too, is what is the script? But again, if we humanize it by looking at our stories, they're not that hard to find. And I think that we kind of forget the fact that we've done a lot of good things. We've done a lot of really good things. Now, on the flip side of that, Deb, is there's this human need for people to help. On the flip side of that, there's also this human need to be like others, the Jones effect, right? And so when you're doing content, which is I helped a first-time home buyer, or I help somebody out buy home, it doesn't relate to me. I don't care. But if it was like, well, I helped so and so buy a home in this neighborhood at this age and this thing, and if it's me, I'm like, I want to be that too. Like, I don't want to see somebody of my demographic purchase a home when I couldn't purchase a home, or do it when I could do it. Like, I want to be a part of that. And that's the thing about social psychology, is that you will attract a lot of buyers, you attract a lot of people if you put out, I help somebody just like you.
Right.
You want to be next, because they want that so bad, because jealousy and envy is a thing. It is. And it's in the psychology of sales.
Is huge. I mean, we're social beings. So,
right.
As much as I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, only dead fish go with the flow. Like, you can't always just go with the flow.
Yeah.
But social, and especially millennials, like millennials require so much validation through social, where they can't make any decision without getting some kind of recommendation poll. It's just the spirit of the animal and the beast. And so, whereas Gen Z is a little bit more purpose, like they will overspend for a bar of soap, like $10 more for a bar of soap versus Ivory soap, simply because of the story or the hands who made the soap is what they buy into. And they don't have money for it, but they'll support the cause. So a great marketer, when you talk about your skills, the 3 skills that, the modern mortgage professional needs, too often I see most marketing departments are really just glorified IT departments. And they don't understand the behavioral triggers, the desires, like deep desires, not just the physical want or need. Like, I need to buy, or I want to buy my first home. Well, why? Like, I'm buying a home because what is it that is it security? Is it safety? Is it status? Like, what's the real root cause, which takes understanding, human psychology, and then also communication and how people make decisions. If you don't have those 3 skills, from just what drives humans, how do they make decisions, and what are the behavioral triggers, then you probably just have a glorified marketing IT team than, one that is going to help you with conversion.
Yeah. Flyers and CRMs and automation of marketing. It's not, there's not a human aspect to it. Correct. So let's talk about the final subject to bring this home. Let's talk about what we know about the different generations and the buying behaviors. One thing that I can tell you about the different platforms is they also tend to be populated by different generations as well too. So besides the actual features and how much time people are on, for example, Facebook is going to generally be Gen X dominant. And again, this is generalities, right? Because we're on all of them, but Facebook was really a Gen X thing that started in 2008. And what do they call themselves? The geriatrical millennials, And then you've got the millennials down to Gen Z down in Instagram, younger millennials and Gen Z in TikTok. And then I think professions across the spectrum are going to be on LinkedIn. My friend who is 55 years old said, man, I found your daughter on LinkedIn. I feel really old. And I said, it's LinkedIn. Everybody's like all ages. You know what I mean? Same with YouTube, right? But so that's a little bit of it. That's a little bit of it too. And here's where the buying generations matter. And here's why I always say that we have to have a hybrid approach, because as much as I want to evolve into modern basics, like I'm going to DM somebody, I might not DM a boomer client, right? And so you have to have processes. One of the things that your sister talked about this a lot is if you have different demographics, to have slightly different processes for the different demographics, where that you might handhold a boomer a little bit more. They're going to like, yeah, let's get on the phone, right? The Gen Z clients, the young millennial clients, they're going to be quick to like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do a Zoom. I got that on my phone. And where can I upload these documents? And I'll DM you, that type of thing, right? So you made a point that was really interesting. I read this article about 6 years ago. I think it was the Jags, that the Jaguar team had like the youngest average age team in the NFL. It was like 20 something. And they said, What's interesting is the way that they practice compared to an older team.
Hmm.
They always practice together. They watch a lot of tape. They examine a lot of stuff. They won't buy into something until they do it over and over again. They get validation from the other players. It was a very tribe mentality, and so why does that matter? Sometimes, I mean, I know this is, this is social media, but even in sales, don't be surprised that that younger millennial is going to ask approval from their parent, right? When a Gen Xer is like, call my parent. What are you talking about? I left my parents at 17. I was a latchkey kid. I don't need approval from my parents, right? And so people sit there like, man, these kids nowadays, it's like, well, that's a generational behavior of these kids, right? Are there any standout behaviors that you've seen that you think that we have to be aware of when it comes to social cues or things like that with the different
Well,
generation?
the younger demographics are more research obsessed because they were born basically with an iPad in their hand. So they have the least amount of tolerance for like slow loading websites and, no link in your bio, like simply because they were raised where they could watch Netflix while listening to, streaming music on Apple and doing homework at the same time. So like they're
Yeah.
always in a constant state of distraction, and they can actually get a lot. I know people say you can't multitask, but they're pretty efficient with getting things done and resourceful. So if they can't find things and you can't teach them beyond what a chat GPT prompt could teach them, they're going to get a little more annoyed versus
Yeah.
the younger boomers, which was a large portion of the home buyers last year. You better believe that they're probably going to be more on Facebook, and also they're typically going to ask their agent, the agent that they use to buy that home, who they should use if they don't recall the mortgage professional that they had once used. Because most of the time people get confused when they get the servicer, whoever they write their check to, or that like they think that's their loan officer. And if they don't
Right.
hear from you ever, then they don't have capacity. No one has capacity to keep that position in their brain. So I think it's really important that it's a variety of content. So it's not just video content anymore, because not everybody wants to listen to a video, or they can't, and it's not easily screenshotable. There's visual learners out there, and they need the visual of like, the graphs and the charts to also validate, put some meat on your message, because otherwise everyone, there's an oversupply of talking head videos. And at this point, what we're all thinking is commission bread. Like, of course you say, like, no one says it's not a good time to buy. Of course you're going to say that, like you get paid. So what are the other options? How do I know that this is the best option for me? And it's like, we won't go there with people. It's like, we're scared to lose them.
Kristen, who's on this call, made a comment a few months ago. She said, I heard you say it to somebody else, but if I have buyers, I have young buyers that if you don't have a social media account, I will not use you as a loan officer. And so when you look at social, that's branding, and it's so true. And so that's why it blows my mind when I don't think people see the encompassing generation, the generational effects, because I understand that maybe you don't use social media for your marketing and sales, but at least for branding, at least for a high level marketing, because you can't just depend on real estate agents to give you referrals. Because if the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to check your social media and they don't like what they see, even though that realtor referred you, they're going to start to research around. They're going to look for somebody else, and before you know it, you're rate shopped. And so what does your social media brand say? Does it capture their attention? Can it capture that younger generation's attention? And what I said about Michelle, about if I'm going to text blast somebody out, maybe the people that will respond might be the boomers and Xers. But if I'm a millennial and I'm a Gen Z, I'm going to look at this text and I'm like, dude, I gotta research this before I make a decision. And so if you can send them to a link tree that gives them the research that they need, and better yet, you're the only one that did that, and you're the only one that has information on even the basic things like what is a refinance, that generation will choose you first. Right. And that's the behavior.
Like when you think about the people you trust and you would take advice from, or how even like the word of mouth referral, which I know there's another coaching group that tried to dismiss social media and wanted to just solely focus on word of mouth referrals, which sounds great if we lived in a very linear world, which we don't anymore because of the TikTokification and how that altered consumer behavior, where we have multiple influences that shape our decision making. So in order to accelerate that trust, and this is kind of the call before the call, like what used to happen on a sales call, that forward aspect is no longer happening on the first sales call. It's happening online on social, because at the end of the day, we can't trust people that we can't see. We can't trust people that we don't learn from or who we don't know intimate details about. Like at the very fundamentals, that's how we learn to trust somebody. And usually the more they're like me, the more I can trust them.
Look how low we are in the totem pole of trust. And so you have to use your marketing, your social, your branding to get you higher up the ladder. And, that's what, and especially from the younger generation, that, even the younger generation, even choosing a doctor, they're going to do like 2 hours of research picking a doctor. That's
and they go to the search feature in TikTok and Instagram over Google. That's what's mind blowing. They don't even go to Google. They go to it's long form search.
It's true. Like in Instagram, I'm sitting there going, oh, I need to find a golf video, for example. I'm not going to go to Google. I'm just going to search within Instagram because there's already content there in Instagram. Or like you said, within YouTube. So if I'm on YouTube, I might just be searching there.
Right.
To find that information. Thank you, Deb, to close that out. When we look at the future of the market and where it's going, not only should this not be a conversation anymore about like, what is do I have a social media strategy? What are doing? It's like, absolutely 100% yes. But start off so you're not intimidated, asking yourself, what is my purpose, and can I do a couple of things at a time? In the social media intensive, Deb forced me, because I had to do the homework. I'm like, shit, like I can't like be the only person that does the homework. I'm like, let me fix my Instagram. You know what I mean? But she made me fix it, where I said, okay, what does my Instagram say about me as soon as you go to my page? What does it look like? And so I did what she said. I pinned my top 3. I changed my thumbnails because I wanted, even if I don't do a lot of content, it still reflects my brand. And then if somebody goes here and somebody clicks here, what do they see? And I changed my title and everything else. And for me, I said, I've accomplished the branding aspect of it. And that was important, and then go to the marketing aspect of it, and then going to the sales aspect of it. And then you can look at different platforms. You can look at Facebook, you can look at, LinkedIn and TikTok. So anyways, thank you so much, Deb. I'm going to take you off. Everybody say goodbye to her.